There is an epidemic happening in men today. Weakness and comfort has taken place of strength and purpose. Masculinity is labeled as toxic, and women are now the ones who define what a man is more than men are. Weak fathers are raising lost boys who are at risk of never being initiated into manhood. We've grown farther and farther from God, which led us to become weaker and weaker. The man within fights back by introducing men to their true strength and purpose through God. So join me, and together we can restore true strength and purpose in men. Hello, and welcome back to the Man Within podcast. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. So glad to have you guys here. The Man Within's mission is to help lead men into godly manhood by providing a clear definition of biblical masculinity, keeping them accountable through brotherhood, community, and teaching them about purpose, faith, fitness, finances, relationships, anything and everything a man needs in order to grow physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Today we have a very special episode because we have our very first guest on the Man Within podcast, and what a terrific, amazing, a great guest to kick things off with. Brett Rademacher is an absolute genius and pioneer when it comes to remote selling. Starting his sales career back in the 90s, he gained revolutionary insight from God that put him decades ahead of the curve. At the height of his sales career, he was earning over $350,000 a month in commissions. What's even more amazing is that he was doing this in Alaska, a market that was considered a dead zone. When it comes to business and sales strategies that work, Brett is your man. Brett is the founder of Shofar Global Network, which helps business professionals with clarity, vision, mindset, insight, strategy, process, sales systems, troubleshooting, scaling, advanced sales skills, talent acquisition, development, team building, leadership, philosophy, and culture. So when it comes to business strategies and sales, you can count on Brett and the Shofar Global Network to help you get there. If you want to reach out to Brett and learn from a proven 7-figure sales leader, head over to shofarglobalnetwork.com. That's Shofar, SHOFAR, globalnetwork.com, and I will leave a link in the description below. Now, without further ado, I invite you to listen to Brett's incredibly inspirational story.
Yeah, absolutely. So little backdrop real quick. So I'm 61, married, we have 8 kids. And so I was I was raised Catholic. I was a terrible Catholic. I got kicked out of Catholic school. I got fired as an altar boy. Nuns couldn't stand me. I was on that, you know how they have a punch card when you buy sandwiches? I was on like
You
a
had a
hack
punch.
plan. I was at this one Catholic school where
Wow.
when you got in trouble, you always got 3 hacks, and a hack's a wooden paddle. It had holes in it, and the nuns would swing it like a baseball bat. And so you got one for doing what you got one. It's always 3 hacks. You got one for doing whatever you did wrong, which in my case was being disruptive, usually in class. Second one was for killing the teacher, causing problems and killing the teachers, class time and being an issue there. And then one was for the principal because she was the one swinging the hack and the paddle. So and I was highly disruptive in religious classes, and
Oh,
highly, and I have no reference point for that. Didn't give much thought about God. And I do remember this one situation that was strange, to say the least. So they had this I don't know what kind of holiday or whatever it was, but they had this giant crucifix of Jesus, statue of Jesus, on the altar, and they had us all come down and genuflect, and you were supposed to kiss the feet of Jesus on the cross. And I
yeah.
was just, this is so weird. And I faked it. I was like, I'm not doing this. I was just like, this is nuts. And that was like 7th grade. So even back then I was like, oh, okay, something's not right here. And I always thought going to the confessional booths were creepy. The
Yeah.
whole thing, I just was not a good Catholic at all. And went to Catholic high school for a bit, got kicked out of there. And so in my early 20s, I got out of the Marine Corps, and a friend of mine invited me to a church service, and I had no reference point for anything, like nothing. I think I'd been to a couple friends had invited me to a couple Pentecostal churches where people sang and danced and all, and I was like, just laughed. I was like, and I wasn't mocking. It was like, it was just like I didn't get it. It was like, what is going
Yeah.
on?
Yeah.
And it was just out of my wheelhouse. And so he invited me to Assembly of God Church, and it was a youth group, late teens, early 20s, and at the end, whatever the altar call was, I knew I was supposed to raise my hand. Would you like to accept Jesus as your Lord or Savior? I'm paraphrasing that because I don't remember exactly what he said. It was like
Yeah.
almost 40 years ago. But I knew right away I was supposed to do that. And I ended up going home, and I mean, I was lit up for about 6 months. And I told my mom had been praying for me forever, and she was like, crying, couldn't believe it. Mom, and I don't even know what happened. I raised my hand, right? And no idea what I signed up for, right? Because there's a lot more, right? There's not a lot more than, just raising your hand to. And then about a week or two later, they said, would you like to come up and pray in tongues? Whatever, however they phrase that, like, would you like to come up and be filled with the Holy Spirit? We'll pray for you. And I was like, well, I have no idea what that means either. Okay. So I go up there and I ended up sounding like a drunken Irishman. I was like, and I'm like, okay, all right. And I didn't know what to do with that. So then, a few weeks later, they had, this is really, and I tell this because this was kind of my start of my journey of, this is when now I'm starting to seek God. Now, I don't think I found God like on the day I raised my hand. I think what I got is an invitation to start the journey, right? To get on the path. And I learned this the long way, hard way, because I really didn't understand what was going on. Nobody explained it. And in church, outside of that event, this church was kind of like a club, right? It was a youth group club. There was nothing really going on behind that. So this was kind of like your entryway. I didn't realize that at the time. But a few weeks later, they had a church service where they had they said there was a pastor within their, area or connections, and he'd been booted by the church for whatever reason, and that he needed help. And I had my entire paycheck in cash in my pocket, and I knew I was supposed to put it in there, and I just put the whole thing in there. And I went and told my parents about that, and they just thought I was an idiot. And they're like saying, "Oh, you just got scammed." No, I knew I was supposed to do it. And I say that, and the reason I say that, it talks about the Bible and giving in secret, but I share this story because I think there's certain things in your life where God leads you to a situation, whether you want to call it a test or, a progression, whatever word you want to use, to check your heart, to check your obedience. And if you follow that breadcrumb and you just do that one thing, it opens the door for the next thing. And there's things along the way that if you don't do that, I think you may delay where he's trying to take you or lead you, or you have to go around the mountain again. At least that seems to be my experience. And anytime if you want to ask a question or interject, I don't need to just be a monologue either if you want. So,
No,
uh,
I'm enjoying listening.
okay, all right, okay. So then, so now I'm like, I'm not. I know God's real, but now I'm reading the Bible and I'm reading things that are not computing with what I'm seeing in church. And the two things that I'm seeing are hearing his voice, like literally, not like the Bible is the word of God in the essence of actually speaking. It is a written document of people's experiences that have been inspired by God, the Holy Spirit, and then collected by men. And then you have some translation issues because Greek and Aramaic and English are not real compatible. And so this process of learning these things, but Jesus, he had a trump card in this. And what did he say? He said, the King James Bible will lead you into all truth.
Hmm.
No, I don't remember him saying that. No, he said the Holy Spirit will lead you into all truth, right?
Yes.
He knew ahead of time that there would be issues. There might be, Pharisees and Sadducees that twist the scripture, right? That's one of the things he came to address.
Hmm.
Or there might be areas where there's no scripture. There might be areas where the Bible that you have doesn't do a real good job of communicating the heart and what God intended you to understand. There's cultural issues, there's historical issues, but there was two things that I was picking up, and that was I believe miracles, and I believed God spoke. I was stupid enough to believe that. I was an idiot to believe that, and the reason why is I started going to church looking for this. Like I want to see what I'm reading. You're telling me the Bible's the word of God. You're telling me the Bible's true. And
Okay.
then you're saying God doesn't speak today and he doesn't do miracles today. And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. Like you can't play both sides of the fence like that. So,
Right.
and then the other thing I noticed was that the people that were telling you that God doesn't speak today, they weren't much different than the people that were just everyday non-Christians. Like there wasn't anything, there was
Mm.
no life, no spirit. I mean, as you go this walk and you start picking up on
Yeah.
these things, it leaves clues. And I kind of have a tendency to pay attention to clues. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't get this. And so if there's a denomination out there, I've probably visited it at least once. And I would go and when you have these experiences, a lot of church experience. I've had more different church experiences than most people. You see a lot of things. I mean, I've seen the full gamut from so quiet and reserved you could fall asleep and take a
Hmm.
nap and you wouldn't even know that you were in a church to I remember one time going to a black church and I didn't care what kind of church it was. I went to an all black church. I was the only white guy in there.
Yeah.
And there was a little lady about 80 years old, and I mean, they're jumping up and down and they're praising the Lord. And I'm a white guy. I've never seen anything like that in church in my life. And she
Right.
kept elbowing me because I wasn't jumping up and down. I couldn't stop laughing because I was just so out of my element. But the fervor and the energy and the life that they had in their worship was night and day different to how most churches are, white churches. And so all these experiences, you start realizing a couple things. Number one, a lot of different ways people are trying to connect with God. And then also a lot of people are really not living a life by the Spirit, not hearing his voice. They're living a life of biblical principles. And that's a
Mm.
big difference, huge
Yeah.
difference, because we're supposed to operate by what? Spirit and truth. Scripture's truth. Spirit leads us. Spirit validates truth. Truth opens up to the spirit. They're interrelated. You can't have one or the other. They have to
Right.
be combined, right? And so a lot of people are trying to operate on the truth, but I've learned through experience that look at this Pharisees and Sadducees. Okay, nobody alive today knows Torah. Okay, obviously they didn't have the New Testament, but scripture for that day like they did. Nobody.
Right.
There's nobody alive. Why? Because they lived it, culture. They were right there. They were
Ah.
speaking it. They were right. Nobody. Okay.
You know, what's funny
Yeah,
is this brings up a really good point. You bring up a really good point. It's not just rules, it's also faith. Um,
absolutely.
and there's this formula that I like.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
formula is not the best word, but I would say God's formula for growth is faith plus action equals growth.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
have, if you have action alone, you might make a little progress, but if you don't have faith, you're not going to make faithful progress on God's path. But
Right.
faith alone is a spiritual gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing about it is faith is scary because he will always call you to do things that you have to depend on him. Let's get back to that because there's some things that I learned the hard way on that one. But if you look at the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they knew scripture better than anybody alive, and yet Jesus is in front of them and they don't recognize him as Messiah. Okay. If that and the only people that recognize him, very few, were by the Spirit, by revelation, right? And we have to realize I remember this was in the early 90s and reading Romans. And I would go and I'd read some chapters in Romans. And I remember one time, I can't remember which chapter it was, I kept reading it over and over and over again, and I felt like a complete idiot.
Hmm.
I couldn't understand what I was saying. And I was like, I was like, and I've learned over the years that you can read things in the natural. There's no doubt about it, but you have to have your eyes open. And I've had God do this to me a number of times that there's, it's like he has each one of us has our own specific path to walk, and he knows what we need. He knows what he's training up for. He knows our life purpose. And you can't, if you're here on that path in your walk, you can't leapfrog, you know, 10
Hmm.
blocks like a board game because
Hmm.
you want to, or you're
Hmm.
impatient, or you think that's best. It doesn't work like that. And so you have to earn the bits that he gives you by
Hmm.
being obedient to what he's showing you. And and this is a process, because the process requires a gradual reduction of self. A mentor of mine who's passed away, he used the word, if you look at Jesus' ministry, the word that encapsulates it, that we're supposed to walk in, is selflessness. And that means God is coming through us and his life is living through us, and we're the vessel. And there's a lot of things in our life that have to be cleared out that clog that pipe. And that's the whole reason why Jesus said we're going to go through trials and tribulations.
Yes.
It's not to punish us, it's because those are the areas that keep God from being fully in us, so that we can be that holy vessel, that, because there's no way we can do it on our own. Zero. Like, I don't care. Memorize all the Bible verses you want, say all the prayers you want, go to church. Those are all works. And if you're paying attention and you're doing that, you're going to get to the place where you're going to go, this ain't working. And I think we all go through that. We're like, this ain't working. And so um this progression led me to where, um this was in the early 90s now. So Missy got saved. I mean, I'm such not a date guy. I think it was like 82, maybe something like that. So I was around early 20s. And so my wife and I were down in Texas, and we used to go to this restaurant. The guy that owned it was a great guy. Great food, had nice conversations, and he'd been raised Christian, became a Muslim.
Hmm.
I just found that really fascinating. I was like, what caused me to do that? And so we'd have these conversations, never debates, never argumentative, or anything. I was just curious. And he said the most thought-provoking thing I think I've ever had anybody say for me in context of this, walk. And he said, and this applies to everybody, like, this is
Hmm.
the greatest question, your comment. He said, Brett, you're only talking about things you've read, not what you've experienced. I was
Hmm.
like I was just like, he was 100% right.
You know
In the
what's
context, huh?
what's so good about that is that goes right back to what you said earlier. Someone who only lives by the rules wouldn't understand what that means.
No, no.
And I guess another question is, can you fully experience God's grace and all of God's blessings and I guess miracles if you're only living by the rules instead of through the spirit, through the faith?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so over this, so this is like 10 years out from when I got saved. And I'm really starting to wrestle with not hearing his voice, like, really. And to the point where I'm like, I'm too bad a guy. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not saying the right prayers. I haven't memorized enough Bible verses. Like, I'm really not getting this. And I'm in Texas at the time, so gone to a number of different churches, some Baptists, Calvary. I don't know. I don't remember all the flavors. And 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 nobody's really talking about, nobody's sharing that. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm so confused. And so then I'm in this place of, I really want to hear God's voice. I truly believe he speaks, but he ain't speaking to me, so I must have done something wrong, right? And I'm wrestling with this for years. So this is not no small thing. So, but I think what that did is it created in me an even stronger desire to hear his voice.
Mm.
And I know some people, I've heard of people that hear his voice right out of the gate.
Hmm.
I've heard people that like they seem to have ongoing conversations with him all the time. And that wasn't me. So that was another thing. And I know from experience and other people, it's different for everybody for
It
different
is.
reasons. There's no pattern here. It's not, we all want patterns. We all want cookie cutter methods, especially if you're in business, right? I want a framework. I want a
Yeah.
process,
With a
right?
five-step process to talking to God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want a method. Anyway, I like that. No. And God has his individual whatever for us, and that we have to walk it through step by step, and it's simply not easy. And but this desire came. Now, there's an interesting thing that happened that I think might have been a catalyst for when things started shifting. And I remember uh, there's a guy by last name of Letourneau. I think it's J.C. Letourneau. He was very famous in the 30s and 40s, around that end, for making big, heavy, monster earth moving equipment. He had a number of failures. Christian businessman, became quite successful, but he would get these ideas, and he was known as God's businessman. That's another thing that was interesting. But he would get these ideas and to make money, and then God would lead him where to put it. And he ended up starting a Christian university called Letourneau University. And I remember when I heard that story and read about it, I go like, that would be so cool to be able to get ideas from God on how to do business or create things, and then he would give you the money to then you could go help people and do that. And it just resonated with me. I just thought,
Yeah.
wow, that to me, and here I am. I'm in sales. I'm one of the top sales guys in everything I do, but it's not like my deepest thing, right? And so I'm like, wow.
Mm.
And I prayed. I said, God, I would like to be like that. And then another prayer, Jeremiah 33:3. I've prayed this for decades. It talks about, I will show you great and mighty things. So I've prayed for years, show me great and mighty things. So now we're around 96, and I'm driving down the road, a highway in Texas, and I have this thought. And it's, you're going to have a global marketing organization involving many people using cutting edge technology involving many people. I'm like,
Wow.
wait, and did not know it was God. He told me at the end of 2000 that was him. So we're talking, he said that to me,
Yeah.
and I didn't know it was God. So that's another thing I want to point out. Sometimes you'll get things from God, and if you don't have not experienced with this, you won't realize it. Like, he speaks to me mostly now. I get real strong impressions. I'll have dreams, and then once in a while he'll drop a phrase or a word in my spirit. And my wife gets stuff all the time in dreams,
Mhm.
especially around the times he's having her fast. So I'll just fast forward to that. So I had a couple businesses, nothing global, nothing with a lot of people. This is 96, nothing technology based. Like, I'm like, nothing. So fast forward a few years, I felt, oh, that was the other thing. I had this all of a sudden, not long after that, I get this compulsion that I need to be leaving Texas.
Hmm.
And it was so strong. Again, I did not realize this was God until later, but I pulled the trigger too soon, meaning I didn't wait for him to tell, because I didn't know what was going
Uh,
on, right? I'm like, I have no reference point. I'm learning on the fly. And I pulled the trigger too soon. And I even told my wife, I said, we got to get out of Texas. And I don't care where we're going. I don't even care if we go bankrupt. I said something along like, it was so strong on me.
mhm.
And I pulled the trigger too soon. Wrong situation. It was a complete disaster. And I had to come back to Texas with my tail between my legs, right? and
Ah,
then, yeah,
I got a theory on that. Yeah.
yeah. What?
Yeah, when you try to put the cart ahead of the horse, generally God's not going to put you back where you were. He's going to put you in a place worse than where you started.
Yeah, I got spanked. Bottom line, I really
Yeah.
did.
I'm getting
Yeah.
spanked right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Getting
Yeah.
the wax from the nurses. What was it called?
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
got 10 of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we have to go through those. I mean, we're like kids in the spirit realm, like our little kids are in the natural. It's like sometimes you got to get whacked because those kind of experiences let you know that there's repercussions for
Right.
doing for getting off the path, right?
Right. And it's
And
like,
so I got whacked. It was brutal. Came back, tail between my legs. Had to spend a little more time in Texas. It's totally sucked. But there was some good things that came out of coming back from Texas as well. So it's not like there was actually some good lessons, some good things that happened beyond just coming back. So then I got led to move us up to Washington State, where my wife and I are originally from,
okay.
and and then my dad's health was he had a couple of health challenges, and he'd been a Navy fighter pilot, Blue Angel test pilot. I mean, like the real deal. He was one of the first guys classes to go through the Top Gun school, like the movie. He was one of those pilots, and so but he had couple minor heart attacks, and I just felt like I need to go see him. So I go up to visit him, and I go, he's not gonna live much longer, and I need to stay up here. So I told my wife, I said, I need to stay up here. I go, I just know I'm supposed to stay up here. And my wife knew she wasn't supposed to come up. So we were apart for a year. So she
A
ended
whole year.
up,
Wow.
yeah, she ended up moving in with her parents, which is interesting because she got to spend a year with their parents. We ended up having a son born while I was down there. I wasn't there. That was the only baby of our 8 kids. That was the only one that I wasn't there for the birth. That was really hard. I just wasn't able to get down there. And but her dad passed away, not long after, and she had that good amount of time to spend with her dad that she didn't have when she was younger because her dad left um, her mom when she was 2 and didn't come back till after my wife Michelle was 20. And so here she got to spend a really, good year with her father. So I go up there, and my dad ends up passing away I don't know, about a year and a half later. But so when I get up there, it's so crazy. I like sharing this story because I know so many people are walking through these things where they just know they're supposed to do something. It's scary. They don't know what it means. They don't know where it's going. But if you know God is leading to you, or you're supposed to do it, all you got to tell you is just do it. Unless you're getting red flags from people that have
Yeah.
good spiritual wisdom. And so but at the same token, I'm also like, I'm up there. I know I'm supposed to be up there without a doubt. And then my parents are telling me I'm idiots. They're telling me I need to be back with my wife. But and I knew my dad was going to pass away, but I'm not going to say, Dad, I feel like you're going to die soon. I mean, I didn't say that.
No.
And I also had the opportunity to have some God talks with my dad because I wasn't 100% sure where he was at spiritually. And he said probably one of the deepest things he ever said to me right before he passed away, and that was priceless. And so, matter of fact, I'll tell you this story. So right before I'm fast forwarding a little bit, and then I'll come back. So, because I think people need to hear this. So when he was getting further along, he ended up getting diagnosed with lung cancer, and they did chemotherapy and radiation, and it ended up burning a hole in his lung. And one day my mom comes into his office, and he's choking on a blood clot, like it's a big
Oh
blood clot
no.
in his throat. Oh yeah, choking to death. And she comes in, she pulls it out. Ugh. And then they come get an ambulance, take him to the hospital, and they have to put him in a drug-induced coma. Now, the reason why they had to do this, my dad was at one time 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Back then, that was what he started smoking when he's 12. Here he is, elite jet fighter pilot, U.S. Navy. But I remember as a kid, he would smoke these Camel barebacks, no filters. But as he got older in life, there was a time where he's smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I mean, literally, you're breathing through cigarettes. So it's no wonder you're going to get lung cancer, right?
Wow.
And So, so, so he's in the hospital, drug-induced coma. There's nothing you can do about it. He's going to die. Matter of fact, when he first got diagnosed with lung cancer, this was my dad. He lit up a cigarette, said to my mom, "Don't worry about this, Shirley." That was my mom then. "Don't worry about this." He wasn't laughing like I am. I just think this is funny. He goes, "Don't worry about this, Shirley. We'll lick this thing." I mean, that was my dad. Like, he was just like no fear of death. He'd faced death many times, and I was like, "Geez, he was just iron-willed, no fear." That was crazy. So then they put him in the hospital, drug induced, 24 hours, and we had this thing. I said, there's no way I want my dad to die alone. I mean, even if he just dies in his sleep, I'll take the night watch. Somebody's got to be in his room. So I took the night watch. So this went on for, I don't know, a week and a half. And then they were going to bring him home from the hospital. I had done the one night watch, went there. And so they were bringing him home during the daytime. I was at my office. And so the ambulance is taking him home. There's no fixing this thing, right? There, there's nothing. It's just a matter of time. So he's laughing and joking with the ambulance drivers about he couldn't wait to get home to have a cigarette. Like, like he could die any minute and he can't wait to have a cigarette, right? The thing that killed him. And so as they bring him in, he's walking up the stairs to the house, and he starts coughing. And he starts bleeding out of his lungs, and he collapses in my mom's arms, and he dies in her arms. And uh, so I haven't thought about this in a long time. So when I got there, they'd already taken him away, and there was blood all over the porch where he bled, and they're gonna bring in some professional cleaners. And I said, no. I go, I'm the guy. I'm the guy to clean it up. I want to do it. It'll be my honor, my privilege. And then they had, if I remember correctly, they had his body in the ambulance, and my two sisters were there, and they weren't believers, and they were just losing it. And the Spirit of God just hit me. And I mean, I got so excited and jacked, and I said, Dad's in a good place. I knew that he had his heart right with God. And I mean, it just hit me out of the blue. And I was just so ecstatic for your father to be died and have that much joy on you. It was so supernatural. And it was just confirmation. It was just God giving me grace. And,
Wow.
and then I've never told this story publicly. And then it's just emotional. I haven't really thought about it. And then I remember when I got to do his eulogy, and there was people that flew in, and I mean, my dad was one of the best fighter pilots in the Navy ever. And there's a bio thing I put on Facebook, Veterans Day kind of reminder thing I put out. But he was certified in 55 different aircraft, did over 350 combat missions in Vietnam. His fighter squadron, when he was the commander last year, Vietnam won best fighter squadron. He was the number 5 lead solo, which is the best pilot on the Blue Angel team. I mean, everybody I met with him said he was the best pilot they'd ever flown with or been around or seen fly. He never lost a wingman in combat, which was the thing he was most proud about. And so so I got to, his eulogy, and the Spirit of God just came on me, and so many people just came up, and I knew that God had spoken through me through being able to say that. And I say that because here's a guy that spent years wanting to hear God's voice, and that as you go through this process, it will start happening, and then you can be that conduit of Spirit in those situations where he leads and opens up, and you never know. Who would think those kind of things, that would happen in that kind of situation. So now that we gone over the weak side emotional stuff, so I'll backtrack a little. That was unexpected, by the way. So then uh, um, a number of months prior to that, I had rented an office, and this is where things started getting interesting. I I had to figure out something else to do, and I'm going to give you the real hyper speed overview of this. So I ended up spending 3 months just researching the internet, trying to figure out the internet. This is 98. And I know that something is big on the internet. I don't know what it is, don't have a clue. I can send an email, work a browser. That's it. Right. So I spent 3 months trying to figure out, where there was a hidden opportunity, what I could do, what I could. And I'm not a tech guy. My original major when I went to college was commercial art. So I'm not like in that technical zone. So God ends up, and now I'm feeling I'm getting these pieces, but I'm not like hyper aware that he's really doing it, right? So I'm crossing this line of getting stuff, but not like totally. I'm not tuned in enough to get like he's giving it to me yet, right?
Mhm.
So then I have this 4-part hybrid business model that as soon as I get it, it was like an epiphany. It was like a spiritually, it's like bam, and it just lit me up, and it just became like I had this vision, this passion like I'd never had before in my life, and it's like I got it, but it's not an understanding of God speaking to me like I have now. So the progression. And so then it's around this concept of remote selling using the internet as a platform, building sales automation, um, referring, and it started with Amazon had started a 1-tier affiliate program. But I thought, man, if you could have salespeople that refer people to websites, and there's a sales made and the sales rep makes a commission, you're using sales automation, like I was using Sales Contact Management Act way back in the early 90s. And then the internet as a platform, so you'd be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, global, and then using mass media advertising for driving traffic. I go, wow. So then I got it. Then I go, oh wait, I gotta come up with a software system to do this. So I'm like,
Right.
well, I don't have a clue. So I spent about a year getting ripped off, taking advantage, learning all kinds of things, mostly like what I didn't know. But over the course of time, I started jimmy rigging this piece of software. People started hearing about me, and who's this wacky guy from Alaska. And then I got involved with one of the Zig Ziglar's company, ended up becoming a top sales rep, top sales team builder from Alaska. It was like should never have happened kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then they sold that company. And then here's where everything shifted. Somebody sent me a book anonymously called God at Work by Rich Marshall. And it was basically about business people and how they operated in the kingdom and how they interface with pastors. And it uses the analogy of kings and priests, right? And I'd never even heard of these concepts or anything. And while I'm reading this book, I get like this 3-week download matrix. And this is where I start realizing, oh, God's like speaking to me. And that's when he made it clear to me that that word about you're going to have a global marketing organization involving many people using cutting edge technology was him. And he made it very clear it was him. And I ended up writing this 26-page letter that I used to then launch a software company, Next Gen, because all the stuff we've been doing up to that time was really Mickey Mouse. We, you know, doing our stuff, jacking in a couple other people's software. It was really ridiculous if you look back now. But this was pre-Infusionsoft, pre-ClickFunnels, those kind of apps, right?
Mhm.
So I was one of the first guys in the world to do. Now I called them lead capture pages. They call them landing pages. So I would embed. Now they call them VSLs, but I would embed flash videos in a lead capture page, i.e., landing page, with a lead capture form, autoresponders, contact management, self-replicating websites, so you get which work way better than affiliate tracking links. And so I built this enterprise level system, but before that, it was like really handed done, goofy. And then um, I wrote this 26-page letter to launch it, and I pre-sold subscriptions, raised a significant amount of money because the concepts and ideas I were talking about, they're very mainstream now. They weren't back then. It was what God had shown me. And he had given me these pieces over the 2 years I'd been toiling in the basement, struggling, getting screwed up, really. And then he added that revelatory insight of what I was supposed to do with this global Christian business network concept. And it was very rudimentary then compared to now, because he gives you pieces as needed. You're on a need to know basis, right? And a lot of times we don't need to know it because we'll screw it up or the enemy will mess it up, right? So I ended up a few weeks after that, I sent the letter out to a small group of people that just said, Brett, whatever you're doing, we want to work with you. And so this was a Sunday morning. I'm laying in bed and God speaks to me. This is the first time he ever spoke into my spirit. So this is beginning 2001. So around 20 years, a little under 20 years after I got saved, this first time he speaks into my spirit. That's a long time. And he says, go to church and get anointed with oil for business. Like when that happens, if that's never happened to you, and the first time it happens, you're wrecked. You are wrecked as a human being in a good way. Like you are just like, what?
Oh yeah.
Happened to me? I was rattled, shattered, blown away, confused, just like circuits pop. Like what just happened? Then the second thing, I was freaked. I wasn't planning to go to church that morning, so now I'm freaked out. Like I couldn't get to church fast enough, and I think I got in even a little late. And the previous 2 weeks that we'd had church there, and I was in and out. Again, I'm still wrestling with. I'd go to church for a while, and I'm not feeling God's spirit. I don't get it. I'm confused. And they prayed for people to come up and anoint them with oil and for healing. And so I had a reference point for that. Well, they weren't doing that this Sunday. So, and I'm like really freaked out now because they finished service, they're not doing it. And I'm like, I can't leave church. Somebody's got to do this. So I go up to the pastor afterwards and I go, God told me you're supposed to anoint me with oil for business. And he just looks at me like who does that? Right? Like he just looks at me like, oh, okay, you weirdo. And so they got somebody with some oil, prayed for me. Then after, then like after that, just about everything I was doing took off. And over the next 2.5 years, I became one of the top people in the world in my niche. I ended up being a pioneer in remote sales. I called it virtual sales back then, but like when COVID hit, remote sales went mainstream. I was a literal pioneer in that. We had almost 30,000 people using and marketing our software as affiliates. I built sales organizations in the thousands and number of projects, tens of thousands in several projects. I got written up, asked to speak, making over $500,000 a month. Just like it was crazy. So, and so I'm gonna tell, I know we're going long, but I want, and we can always do a two-parter here because I want to tell one more piece of this story, and then it opens up for the whole second half of the journey. Like this was just prepping for the second half.
Mm-hmm.
So then, about 2 years later, I was in Hawaii on a business trip, and I met this lady who had made a lot of money in real estate, and then she became a Christian and found out she had a prophetic gifting. Now, the previous year, in 1999, I'd had 3 different people send me prophetic words. 2 of them were about things about to take off. You're going to help a lot of people make money. You're going to, just those kind of things. And then the other one was a little more sobering and ominous about what God was calling me to. And she said, it was a dream she had about me. And she said, you're never supposed to share this. And I never had, but it had me go like, whoa, what's going on here? And so, but I'd never met anybody personally that had prophetic gifting. So I'm like, okay, she got prophetic. So I said, I'm such an idiot. And since then, I've had hundreds of prophetic words about what God's called me to, but up till this point, I've like real no reference. And I go to her, I go, well, how's it? I said, well, do mine. She goes, well, it doesn't work like that. I go, well, how's it work? And she goes, well, I have to pray about it. I said, okay. And so I give her my contact information, and a couple months later, she calls me up and she goes, Brett, I have a word for you from the Lord. And I'm like, as soon as she said that, I just got hit in my spirit. It's like, whatever she says is from me. I was like, I mean, like, it just like, boom. Now, that was an impression, wasn't a word, but it was just like, whatever she says is from God. So she said, what's your fax number? I give my fax number. And she faxed it over. And so it was about a page and a half, still haven't. But there was a section in there, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it's basically, you're about to come into a time when you're going to be abased. Do not fight it, because I've purposed it, because you have, or it will take longer, because I have many things for you to do. And I was like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I knew it was true. And I'm like, I'm a word guy. I will look up what multiple definitions of words are. I'm like right away going to the dictionary, and I'm looking for any other alternative variations of what a base. I know it's real. I mean, I got
Ooh,
hammered, and I go, abased. I'm like, oh, this isn't good.
you're about to
And
be
then
humbled. Yeah.
what's that?
You're about to be humbled.
Oh, I'm about, well, and here's the crazy part. I'm doing what God has called me to do. That's what I want to point out. I have been through, I'm really I'm not even understating how hard it was, even when I was having extreme success. It was extremely hard. And I want to point out that I was doing everything God called me to do. And then he's going to like whack me and put me down in the dirt, in the dungeon, in the basement.
Wow.
So that's what I want to point out. It's not like I'm off the ranch. Okay. I'm very aware what I'm called to do. I'm very aware it's Christian based. I'm very about, but I don't have all the details. I'm just going where the breadcrumbs are leading. And now I'm getting this like, okay, now you're really gonna have some fun. I'm like, and I know it's
Oh
God.
boy.
Yeah. And I'm confused. And then about a month later, I'm at this meeting. There's hundreds of sales reps at it. Most of them are from my activities. I was the key driving force from taking this company. They'd been in business 5.5 years. They were only doing 170,000 a month, and they went from uh, in the time I was doing that, went from 170,000 a month in 2.5 years to over 20 million a month.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, that's quarter billion. And so like this company's just exploding. I'm the primary driving force because all the stuff I'm doing, it's stuff that's God's shown me. I'm building it into, I'm doing stuff that's never been done before. He gives me ideas because I have my own software development team now, in-house. I can just take what I'm getting and do it, and I'm able to just move. I'm not waiting for, put it on the development board. Oh, that won't work. All these problems you have with third-party apps. And so I'm going to this meeting, and I'm a key speaker. And so I mean, I'm making over $300,000 a month in commissions just with this one company. And I mean, I should be top of the world, right? And I'm walking down, and we're at this really expensive resort hotel in Southern California. I don't remember the name of it, but anybody that lives down in that area knows it. And big hallway, massive hallway. And I'm walking down, there's nobody in this area. It's probably about 30 minutes before I'm supposed to speak. And I get hit with this overwhelming feeling that everything I'm working on is not the thing God was calling me to. It was just like practice and
Hmm.
preparation and training.
Hmm.
And I truly, the money I was making was not like, it wasn't like making me go money crazy, because I knew I was being led by God. So I'm sitting here completely depressed because I'm not doing what he's called me. Like, this isn't it. And I'm like, well, and I'm literally going, what is it? What is it? And it was so physically obvious that the owner of the company was walking down the hallway, and he saw me, and he goes, Brett, what is wrong with you? And I go, I guess I kind of lied. I said, nothing, I'm fine. you know,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have got it, right? It was like irrelevant to him. He wouldn't have cared. He would like look at me like I was insane if I tried to explain all that. And so and then so a month later, what happened was, and I'll finish up with this, and we can always do a part two. A month later, the company had gotten a warning letter from the FDA about health claims they were making with their nutritional product, which is very common in the nutritional industry. If you're up to speed on that, you literally cannot say what real good nutritional products do to help people, it's illegal. And that's because the drug companies control the messaging, because good nutritional products compete against drug companies. It's a total racket.
Oh, wow.
But you have to play the game. You can't just be so, and so all the times nutritional companies get a warning. Like if you sold cherries, everybody knows cherries is good for gout, right? But if you sold cherries and said cherries kill gout, it's illegal. Like, it's crazy. So
Wow.
no, it's
Wow.
insane. If people really understood how absolutely insane the way drug companies control the FDA, they would be outraged. The people that do know, they are outraged, but there's not enough of them. So anyway, but when you get the letter, you got to do what they say. You can't. And so the owner told us he was doing something about it, and he lied to us. And he didn't do anything about it. And he thought he was smarter than the FDA and playing cat and mouse. Long story short, and I even hired an attorney because he told us he was working on it, but then it was taking a lot longer than it should. And I hired an attorney full time. I was making really good money. I hired him full time, and to help me get up to speed on that and dealing with a lot of business things too. And we flew down twice with the company, and the owners lying to their in-house legal counsel, to their VP of
Mm.
sales, to me, my attorney, my lead copywriter. And ultimately what happened was the FDA got sick of his garbage and came in with guns. FTC brought guns,
Wow.
military guns, and shut him down, sent out a press release, all that. And so it was a Monday morning in June 2003. Joe Miller, their VP of sales, good friend of mine. He actually came out of my sales group. They hired him to be at the company. Really good guy, really smart guy. He built their telemarketing room from just a few hundred people to over 500 people for handling all the inbound orders and
Hmm.
follow up. So he calls me up. He goes, Brett, you're not going to believe this. The FTC just came in with guns and shut us down. I'm like, what? And then a couple hours later, my wife comes in and she goes, all her bank accounts are frozen. I'm like, and then a couple hours later, a lady I can't even show you how high the stack of paper was. A lady shows up on my doorsteps, knocks on the door, and serves me a stack of papers this high, and tells me have a nice day. I'm like, and then I'm just getting wham, wham, wham. And then a few hours later, my name is like on ABC or NBC, the news website, because they sent out press releases, they got cameras there, they got news, they're just trying to, because they do this to scare all the other nutritional companies out there, and it works. And long story short, because of the amount of money I was making, they thought I was one of the owners. And they bundled me in. And then my attorney, he was where front lines, we showed him the documentation, all the stuff that we'd been lied to. We met with him, all that. They didn't care. Now, they did remove me from the action they were taking against the company, but they said, too bad you're on the dartboard. And this is what they said. And this is where I learned how corrupt this stuff is.
Wow.
They said it didn't matter. Didn't matter that I've been lied to. Didn't matter. I had an attorney for like 9 months that had been all over this, and we'd been lied to, met with them, tried to work it out. Didn't matter, right? Because I was the tip of the spear on the sales. I got bundled into the thing. And so this is what they said to me. Okay, so we're not charging with anything. This is all administrative. There's nothing criminal here. It goes, this is all, so we're not charging you with anything. You're not admitting any guilt, but you promise not to do this again. It's just the weirdest thing. And we're going to fine you $1 million, and we're going to take your 3 cars. They like paid for cars. I had 3 cars that were paid for. And then you sign this thing saying you won't ever do this again. You're not admitting anything. You're not be charged with anything. And it's done. And but they said, here's the deal. We're going to fine you $1 million, take your 3 cars. But if you just lay down on this and sign this document, we'll just fine you $1 million or $500,000. And if you fight us, we will bury you. And so I met with a number of attorneys, $50,000 a month to defend yourself.
Wow.
At my level, you never win. The FTC did have a case to win because they were saying you're using these health claims you shouldn't, which I had been, because that's what the company gave us, and they lied to us. They said this is fine and told us we don't need to change anything. So it wasn't like I was going to win. Like I'm like
Yeah.
in the crosshairs, not because I'm trying to be dishonest, but I didn't know. And the company said you're fine. And so then, um, so and there's no way I'm going to win. And so I signed off and I paid him the $500,000. And but there's some other stories that tie in there. But the key thing was that is when the kickoff for the abasement started.
Mm.
Like that was just the
Yeah, I was gonna
beginning.
say,
And
wow.
I thought that was it.
Like, oh no.
No, no. And I'll just plant this one seed, and that is, so remember in the word it said, don't fight this or it will take longer. Now, initially, I thought fight this was a thing. Like don't fight against the FTC. Don't fight the situation of what you're going into. That would be the natural thing. That's what I thought. That wasn't it. It took me a long time to figure this out. I'm not the brightest brick here. So what what I was really what God was really walking me through is my will.
Wow.
I was my will. I was fighting for my will, my way to do things, not his way. Your
Yeah.
ways are not my ways. My ways are higher than your ways.
Right.
And he's got to gut you. And that's why he had to take me through this abasement process that lasted many, many years to prepare me for what he's called me to do. But the will was the thing he had to.
Yeah. Right. And Jesus even said the spirit is willing, but the body is weak.
Yeah, and see, it's not just the physical. See, that's the part where we get these nuances of translation that don't really cover. What he's meaning is who you are as a human being is in constant opposition of the Spirit of God because of the curse. And the
Mhm.
only way is he literally has to circumcise your spirit in order for him to fully manifest in you. And anything of the natural, carnal, normal thing that got corrupted in the fall that has nothing to do with you. You were born with it, right? Like
Mhm.
you came in this dirt suit in this weird world with this insane process that, like, when you think about it, it's completely weird, right? This whole adventure is just weird when you stop back and like, okay, wait, there's a Satan, there's a God, I gotta pick choices. My the way I do things is wrong, God's way is right. How do I
Mhm.
figure this out? I'm hearing all these competing voices, all these things that we have to go through. And I'll just say this one last thing, and that is a number of years later, 2009, I was led to do a 40-day fast, water only,
Mm.
and the only way I could have done it was God. He tricked me into first. Yeah, I thought it was 3 days, and then I thought it was 10 days, and then it went to 40 days. And how I know how much he supernaturally led me is right when it was over. I was so hungry, I would have eaten a car. I mean, I would have eaten anything. I was like, but I mean, like right as it ended on the 40th day, I went from kind of hungry to like so ravenous I could not eat enough food. And so, but shortly after that, he led me into my office. And this was over about a month and a half period. And every day I would go into my office and I would I started writing, and I had no idea where this was going. And it ended up being 18 areas of mass deception going on out in the world. I mean, we're talking everything from food, pharmacy, politics, media. I mean, just the educational system, science. And when I got done with a section, he would leave me to do another one. Well, the whole document ended up being over 150 pages.
Mm.
And I ended up calling it the Shofar Global Manifesto. That was a name God gave me in 2004 after, this other project went in the toilet. I knew there was this next thing I was telling you about. And that's a whole another story. But I want to finish with this because it's so important. Because so I ended up writing this document, but the most important thing in there was that you need to realize that the deception is so pervasive in every aspect of society, culture, globally, that if you're not hearing God's voice and hearing it clearing and being obedient, you will be deceived. You will not be able to know truth, understand truth, or walk in truth. And we're in this season now where you absolutely have to be hearing his voice.
Yeah.
So anyway,
No, that's amazing.
it's
Um,
crazy.
man.
It's my life. It's nuts.
No, I love hearing about it. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I want to give a special thanks to Brett for coming on the show today and opening up for us and giving us a very inspirational and heartfelt message. If you guys enjoyed hearing from Brett, stay tuned for a part 2 of this conversation coming very soon. If you gained any value from this episode, please like and subscribe and let me know which topics you'd like to learn more about. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.